So after the GameSpot interview and the IGN miniseries, there's now been a Game Informer article, which means I'll be finishing tonight's trilogy of AC Valhalla more news and AC Valhalla even more news with a bang, because there's some really interesting stuff in here. I just wish Ubisoft didn't forget to market this game for months, only to drop everything within a day. I am on the verge of a stroke here. Anyway, I'll just get right into this article. As always, I'll link it in the description if you do want to read it for yourself. It's an interview with the wonderful Darby McDevitt, the narrative director of AC Valhalla, as well as a producer on the game, Julian Lafayette. And the first question is about how Eivor differs from your typical Viking stereotype. Vikings were generally known as antagonists to everyone else, but there's a romance to them too, with the hindsight of history, just like pirates. The story we wanted to tell is, why did a huge group of Norse people leave Norway and go settle all over the world? They found Iceland, Greenland, they settled in the Faroe Islands, Ireland, England, Normandy, all these places. It wasn't just to rob them, it was to settle and stay there because they were running out of space and resources. In popular culture, you think about this bearded guy with horns on a drakkar, just raiding and putting fire to everything he can see. This is really a cliche that we wanted to steer away from. Vikings were raiders, yes, very famous warriors as well, but they were also settlers and explorers. Now this is something I love. I always go on about loving how Assassin's Creed used to present its own history, and from the get-go Vidic explains that history books and high school teachers aren't to be trusted to tell the real history. And this isn't even an alternate history thing. We know Vikings weren't just heathens, but immigrants who wanted a better life for them and their people. Obviously there were bad ones about, sure, but not all of them were like that. And we also know that Alfred isn't just going to be a mustache-twirling villain, and the conflicts between the Saxons and Vikings are really interesting, so I'm glad Darby didn't go with a Quebec approach, where it's simply good versus bad, which I wouldn't expect of Darby, and I also love that Eivor isn't playing just a gruff Viking. When the first videos of Magnus Broom playing male Eivor came out, he caught a lot of flack from people who said he sounds too weak or gentle, but again, that's a nice subversion of your usual Viking. I'd much prefer a withdrawn emotional character to a gruff one-dimensional one, because in that case, we'd just have Alexios again. And do you really want that? Don't answer that. A lot of people actually really like Alexios, but imagine like Edward, a great character as this comically over-the-top pirate with a gap tooth and a hook hand. You wouldn't have a story as great and emotional as what Black Flag has. And Darby is never going to steer us wrong with a character-driven story, so in all, I'm fully behind this. The settlement growth is tied to the pacification of England. As you go out and come back and get alliances, and as your settlement grows, your reputation grows and people want to meet you. It's funny because the front half of the game you're going out and seeking alliances yourself, and in the back half, because you have a reputation, more people are coming to you saying, hey, I heard you're great, I'll give you an alliance if you help me with this massive problem. Now, this, like I said in my other video, that I love the idea of people in your settlement building things while you're away. It's so cool when you aren't just giving things to a world, but the world is giving back in a sense, and having people come and find you to ally with you due to work you've done before and your reputation, that is so cool. Like just that fluidity and immersion of becoming so renowned that people want to do that, that's absolutely amazing. As much as it's not really working in the dark to serve the light, I do like this. I obviously take issue with the fact this isn't prime Assassin's Creed stuff, but to some extent I've come to terms with that, and there's still a lot of really cool AC stuff in here. The next section is quite long, and to be honest reinforces that this isn't going to be an ideal Assassin's Creed game. Like the producer literally says it's more about conveying the Viking fantasy rather than killing an arch rival or chasing an Isu artifact, which, as cool as a lot of this is, the fact it's prioritising being a Viking game over an Assassin's Creed one, and even the producer admits that, is always going to hold Valhalla back. You know, despite me loving a lot of what's in this game, and the lack of linearity that was embedded in the series' identity is going to be missed, although I like the idea of each part of the game representing certain themes that play into Eivor's growth. The most interesting part of this section for me is when Darby says there's a certain point, a big point in the middle, where you can follow each story individually, but they also will close in a specific order to give a different sense of conclusion. And I think it's good the story ends conclusively. I'm just wondering what this middle point is. I think it could be when we get a list of targets. We found out recently we'd have a bureau that would use to track down various members of the Order of Ancients. My thinking is that we'd reach that midpoint, hit a major plot point like maybe Sigurd aligning with the Order and us becoming truly initiated with the Assassins, and then we work our way through some Templars, each with their own story, and then we'll get to the end of that, and we'd have the actual end of the game, or something like that. The next section of the article is called Hit List. We're told Sigurd was away for years, which I don't think we knew before. At least we didn't know that it was that long he was away for, and also that Eivor is the clan leader in England, so we can probably assume Sigurd is away during the main game as well. We're told we get a list of targets like Odyssey though, and that comparison was made in that GameSpot interview yesterday, and that concerns me a lot. There are 3 members of the Cult of Cosmos I can remember like even having dialogue, and the cultists were just this huge list of enemies you had to go and kill with no motivation besides them just being the bad guys. The cultist system wasn't inherently bad, but the lack of fleshing out that it got was. It went for a quantity of targets as opposed to quality targets, because I don't mind the idea. I like the concept of killing a target and then having that result in a new lead or a crucial bit of information, but with Valhalla, I just hope they have no more than 15 targets. This is a game that's meant to develop the ideologies of Assassins and Templars with these 2 groups that serve as precursors. The game should take every chance to build on the ideologies of the Order and how they became Templars, what it was that separates them from the Hin ones, what drives them, their pros and cons, their philosophies. We need AC3, AC4 and AC1 type stuff here, where the villains' motives are clear and their philosophies are built upon. And although you may disagree with them, they're all understandable and deep to some extent. And if you go the Odyssey route of having a bunch of targets scattered about, you have fucked so much potential backed by the series' greatest writer. I pray to God the cultist system in this game is significantly improved with far less targets that are far more characterised. It's not as black and white as I'm 100% enemies with the Order of Ancients and 100% friends with the Hin ones. It's a little more juicy than that. A lot of people have been speculating that Eivor would join the Order or start the Templars, but I really don't see that happening. Like, I think the way Darby is going with this is that Eivor's Viking ideologies about freedom, as well as them probably not being happy with oppressive regimes living under one as a Viking, will cause them to align with the Assassins as they grow. I do expect a bit of tension because we know Bazim isn't happy with Sigurd nonchalantly giving Eivor the blade, and there's probably some mistrust there to start. Another cool thing is that the producer says that rather than constantly having to switch weapon, you can pretty much just stick with one you like for the entire game, which is great because it's really annoying having to switch to a weapon class you don't really like because the others aren't viable. Then we get some modern day information which surprisingly confirms that this is the last Layla game. This was something that was fairly obvious before the game was even announced, but there's official confirmation here which is a bit mad. Darby says the amount of time you spend in the present day would be equivalent to Origins and Odyssey, but with the added provision that there are these animus anomalies in the simulation layer. I hate that the animus is considered a simulation now. Stop that, Ubisoft. Please, that's not how it works. You'll find quite a lot of them when you find them as Eivor and touch them. The whole simulation freezes and then Layla drops to disguise. She becomes Layla in the simulation, and then you have dialogue with your present day characters there, and you have to solve puzzles and things like that, and they're very cool, and the rewards for them are mind-blowing. So we found a way so you don't have to get out of the Animus at all times to do the present day. Sometimes the present day happens in the Animus. We knew about the Animus anomalies before, and I'm interested in those, and presumably those modern day characters from the outside in those anomalies are Sean and Rebecca. We do know that Rebecca's coming back with a new voice actor, which kinda sucks, but yeah, I really hope these anomalies are substantial because Darby says the amount of time you spend in the modern day otherwise is equivalent to Origins and Odyssey. And this is meant to be a huge modern day that's meant to be something incredible and totally change our view of Layla. So I'd guess the anomalies are a huge deal and that they're the bulk of the modern day. And that's pretty much everything this article has to offer. I'm so sorry for the spam uploads in the last 6-7 hours. All this news has been too big not to discuss, and I know 3 videos seems like overkill, but that's just how, like, I would have had all this in one if I could have, but that's just how it's panned out. Ubisoft's marketing is as schizophrenic as it possibly gets. Anyway, if you enjoyed, maybe leave a like, and if you didn't, maybe let me know why. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time in another Assassin's Creed video.